Hi everyone, I'm Allie Buchman with the Potomac Bead Company, and today I'm going to show you how to do a V pattern or a zigzag pattern using 8/0 seed beads and a peyote stitch. So this is going to be creating that zigzag pattern. I've chosen to use blue and crystal beads here to make it that chevron pattern. My sister got married last May and everything was in that chevron pattern. I really fell in love with that. So I've chosen to use that dark blue and the silver lined crystal. In addition to my silver lined crystal and my transparent cobalt, you can use opaque, transparent, that's up to you if you want that chevron look. I'm going to be using a cup button as my clasp enclosure. I'm using the Aztec Gold cup button. I'm using Wildfire 0.006 in the white color since I have the crystal. I have handy my thread zap so that way I can cut the thread or zap the ends down tight. I also have my scissors here, my slip and snip scissors. I have size 10 needles that I'm going to be working with. I also have some super glue and I'm working on my bead mat. So to start out here, I have my size 10 needle on a piece of thread and I've used a stop bead. The stop bead is a bead that's not part of my project. In this case, I'm using an 11/0 that I had on my bead mat when I'm working with 8/0s. And it's just going to stop my beads from falling off the end. I've left about 10 inches of thread after the stop bead. As far as thread, if you don't want to have to add any, you're probably going to use about 6 feet of beading thread to make a 7-inch bracelet. I just have a short piece here so I can stay in camera and on film a little bit more for you guys. The stop bead, you're going back through 2 times away from that tail in order to make that bead stop from falling off. If you're not sure about peyote, go ahead and take a break from this video, look at the simple peyote or even the diagonal peyote before you get into the zigzag or the chevron pattern. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start out with 6 beads. Because I'm starting out with 6 beads, I'm doing even count peyote. I'm going to be doing this in a rotation of 2 of my blue, 2 clear, and 2 blue. So I have 2 cobalt, 2 silver lined crystal, 2 cobalt. I'm going to let them drop down next to my stop bead. That 6 wide width is the width of my bracelet. That's how wide the bracelet is going to be. If you would want to do this wider, you can do that as well once you get the technique. You just kind of repeat that pattern again. The first thing I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to come back towards the stop bead and I'm coming out of a blue, but I'm going to add a crystal color. Skip the last blue, bead number 6, and I'm going through the 5th bead that was on there. Give a nice tight pull, and that crystal and that blue bead are going to sit kind of right next to each other. I'm coming out of the blue, and I want this to form a diagonal line, so I'm going to add another blue bead, and then I'm going to go through the crystal. Pull nice and tight. So that's starting to get that diagonal line of those blue and those crystals. When I'm coming out the crystal bead here, I'm going to add a crystal and go through my last bead or my first bead that I put on through that blue bead. I've now created a little bit of a diagonal line with my crystal and my blue. You can see that diagonal line starting to happen. I'm going to go in now, and when you're looking at the edge pieces here, you're going to go in and I'm going to create that last bead in that crystal line. So I'm going to put on a crystal bead and I'm going back towards myself away from my project, and I added that last crystal in place. The next bead I'm going to add is blue, and I'm going into my blue bead. The next bead I'm going to use is crystal because I'm starting another diagonal line with that crystal bead going out towards the end. So you're always adding 3 beads per row. The color order that you add is going to change depending on which way the V is going. I'm coming out of a crystal here and I want to start another diagonal line. To start another diagonal line, I'm going to pick up a blue and I'm going to sew back towards the stop bead now, sew through the crystal. I want that crystal line to continue, so I'm going to add a crystal, sew through the blue. I want the blue line to continue, so I'm going to add a blue and sew through the crystal that's the furthest towards the end. So after I put on the blue and go into the crystal, I want to complete that blue line. I'm going to add a blue bead, and then I'm going to switch to come down again towards me. that's going to complete my initial blue line. The blue line here is always going to be 6 long. So it's 6 beads long because it's going to be all 6 rows. The highest the crystal will ever be is 4. So the highest it's going to be is 4 rows. And then the one at the base here is only going to be 2 rows high. So when I'm going in here, I want to do one more crystal, which will make that crystal row 4 high. Again, the crystal row will always be 4 high. The blue row at the bottom and on the sides is always going to be 2 wide. So I'm going to know that that's my last that I'm doing. I'm now going to go into my V. So I'm adding one more blue, going back towards the start. That gets 3 beads. It's going to be part of my triangle there. Again, I already have 4 high on the crystal. So I know that my V is going to start now and not just creating that diagonal line. I'm at the base here of the blue. That's already got 6. So I'm going in and I'm going to start that diagonal going in the opposite direction, coming back for that zigzag. When I'm here at the end then, I'm going to add a crystal because I want a different color next to that V that's happening. When I'm coming out, then back towards, another blue goes on. Again, going down that line on the other side now, a crystal goes on. So I've gone up 4 crystal, down 3 crystal. So when I'm coming back, I know that I need to do another one of my crystal beads as I go back towards the stop bead, back away from myself. When I'm coming out of the crystal, I'm going to add a blue to continue that blue diagonal line. And when I'm coming out the top there, I'm going to add a crystal to continue with the crystal line. Again, the crystals are always going to have 4 in the line of the V. The blue main one is going to have 6, and the small one is going to be 2 high. When I'm coming out the bottom here, I'm going to start my small V. As I come back, adding a blue. Then I'm going to continue with my crystal and continue with that V. So you want to look at it after you get started here with this V pattern. You want to look at it that you're continuing to create that illusion of a V. Here I'm at the end. I have 5 in this row. I want that 6th one in. So I'm going to create that V with that 6th one. I'm going to use the last one here to do the crystal, creating that 4th crystal in place. I'm going to use a blue to create the 2 high of the blue. So everyone has reached their points and their peaks, and I'm going to start going back and creating that V, adding the colors to make it start to V. So I'm going in the opposite direction now, adding colors. If it helps you also, you can flip your project towards you or away from you as you're working it. But now we're going to start the V and the zigzag in the other direction. So I'm going to continue adding the crystals and the blue, working back and forth, adding in the blues and the crystals to maintain that peyote stitch. You just want to keep an eye as you're working on it, and you're going back and forth, that you have those 2 blue high, 4 crystal high, and 6 blue wide. You can do this with multiple colors. You can do it with more than one. You could do it and pick up a new color every time. That's kind of up to you. But you're just going to continue on working your peyote stitch, getting those rows in diagonal form, which are going to create those zigzags as you work with them. If you happen to stitch a wrong one in place and you realize it, you will realize the look of it is just not happening. If you do that, you can just unstitch or pull your needle off and re-put on the needle again, but that's going to get 2 complete zigzags there, and I'm just going to continue on with that pattern, going again 2 high with the blue, 4 high, and 6 high. Then I know that it's time to turn around and create beads going the opposite direction. So I've gotten a lot longer here, and I'm just continuing to work on this peyote, going back and forth, adding my beads, getting to points and adding. If you can get to the point where you're done your bracelet and you end in the same fashion, that my points would be opposite directions, great. But don't worry about it. It's not that big of a deal if they do end in a different direction. I'm going to continue just adding a little bit more into my peyote pattern and getting that diagonal look. And then I'm going to show you guys how to attach the clasp to the ends. So the one end we did leave on some extra thread, so that way we could add a little extra. And you can see here that we're getting towards the end of that V, and I do want to try to end them on opposite notes if I can, that they're both ending with the same kind of V pattern at the end of one of this line. And sometimes as you're working, you will also have kids running towards you and interrupting a little bit. And then right after that, I had an ambulance drive by. So there's always fun things going around to distract you from your diagonal lines. Again, if you get the wrong one, which I think I've done at least 5 or 6 times, you usually realize it right away, or at least within the next row, and you can kind of pull it out. So I'm at the point now where I've finished one of my points. So I'm going to finish up just this row of peyote, coming down, and then I'm going to get ready to put on my clasp. So on one end, I'm actually going to put my cup bead. On the other end, I'm going to be putting my loop for my cup bead. So I'm going to start with my bead here. Now, if you want to, you can pick up some 11Os that are in the same color and just kind of finish off your pattern and your design, adding some crystal here and some blue here, crystal and some blue and then another blue as well coming down. If you don't have other seed beads and you don't want to grab them, that's fine. I'll teach you how to do it here. It's just going to have a little bit more of a rough looking edge. Again, an 11O will kind of finish that off nice and flush. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to go down a row. So I'm at the end of my beads. I'm going to go down a row to the previous row, and then I'm going to sew up in a diagonal till I get to the middle of the bracelet. So I'm sewing up here until I get to the middle of the crystal, and I'm going to be coming out right there along the crystal, and I'm going to get ready to add my cup button. So now to put on the clasp, since we're coming out right to the middle there, in the middle of those last 3 beads that we put on, I'm going to put on 2 of my crystal 8Os. I'm going up the back of the cup button. I'm going to put on 2 of my Cobalt, down the cup button on the other side. I'm going to add 1 more of my crystal, and then I'm going to skip to the second of those crystal beads there. I'm going to take my needle and thread through. I'm going to give a nice tight pull, and it's going to create a little bit of a Y back there. Because my needle is coming out over on this 3rd bead and the nature of peyote, I'm actually going to go into that bead on the opposite direction and sew down towards the outside in a diagonal through my crystal, blue, and crystal bead. That's going to pull it nice and tight and have that be right there at the end. I'm going to sew down a row, then back up. And basically when you're doing a clasp, you just want to hide your thread. So I'm going to hide my thread here, coming out that crystal bead again, and my thread's going to be hid along the lines. I'm going to go back up my bead all the way to the top here, out the top of that cup button, through the Cobalt beads, down the other side of the cup button, out the crystal bead on the back, out the crystal bead that I went through 2 times, and then I'm going to reinforce that again. All I'm going to do then to tie off my clasp, and when you give a little pull, it's going to center it a little bit more. To tie off my clasp, I'm just going to do some sewer's knots, picking up some of those warp threads there on the side, do a knot. So back into the middle of my project, do another knot, picking up those warp threads. Give a nice tight pull. I like to do this about 3 times, and I'm sewing back through my project a little bit. You want to make sure that you do it on one side and the other side. Otherwise, sometimes that peyote can kind of be pulled in a wave. You can actually get that effect if you want it, like the wavy flag, by going up and down the chevron V's here of the blue V's. And I'm going to end my thread somewhere in the middle of my project. I'm going to go in then to all the places that I added those little knots and just do the slightest touch of glue. I'm going to let that dry. Go in with my thread nips, cut it down low. Go in with my thread burner then. I lost it right there. And just burn off the little bit of thread that's left there. And then I'm done with the one side. I'm going to go over to the other side now. I've taken off my stop bead. I'm going to add my needle and I'm going to create my loop so that I can wear it. So I've gotten my 10 on the other side here, and I'm going to do the same thing where I go back a row and I'm going straight out to the top here to that crystal bead. And I'm going to make my loop. So it's your choice what color you want to make your loop. I like that blue with the gold. That's why I chose the gold. I'm going to make my loop out of my blue beads. You can also use multiple colors. That's up to you. But I'm going to add a bunch of 8/0 beads for my loop. If you're using a regular clasp or a bar clasp, you can do that as well. And you can add that in. And I need a couple more of my cobalt beads here. About 23, I believe, is my count that I need. Maybe a little less than that. I'm going to put those beads on to create my loop to go around my cup button. Now that I have those beads in place, I'm going to go through that crystal bead in the opposite direction, creating a circle. I'm going to take my thread and needle, go back up through the whole thing. And reinforce that. If you want to do a peyote stitch and you had 11s, you could do that as well. If you did have 11s in the same color, I usually prefer my loop with 11s. The 8s just are a little bit bulky, but the nice thing is you can do this whole project if you want with just the 8s. To reinforce it, I'm going to then, after I came back around, I'm going to go to the end here, to one of the sides, and I'm going to start those little stitches. Again, if you want, you could have done a peyote stitch. That's up to you. I'm going to go in here, go back a couple different places, do my little side knots here, grabbing onto any of those warp threads that you have. That's the thread that are in between the beads. You get to the end sometimes and the loop gets small. You can even take your needle back through the opposite way. It's a little trick. Then what I'm going to do is, again, cut down, do a little dab of glue, and burn that glue down. Once you've gotten everything trimmed down and burned down and everything kind of all done, and move your entire bead mat and throw everything, basically you have your fun little V. If you do it in the blue and crystal color or blue and white, you have that fun little chevron pattern that's really, really popular right now. And you have fun just making that zigzag pattern. You can really go crazy doing different colors of V's and get really wild. It can do it with 11s, you can do it with 8s. And it's basically all going to start out with that same pattern of 2, 2, 2. That's going to create that zigzag effect as you work with it. So hopefully you've learned something. Even if you do know peyote stitch, you've learned a little bit about how to do patterns and how to work with patterns. I also do have the video on how to do diagonals if you just want to do the diagonal stitch as well. So this just gives a little bit more into the world of playing with peyote patterns and kind of how to start out to do that. You can do this with like tons and tons of different beads. You can do it with different clasps. You don't need to do the cup buttons, but I think it's fun always to decorate up. Again, you can use 11/0s, or if you're using 11/0s, use 15/0s to kind of close up those gaps, but that is up to you. If you get a chance, you can also watch the rest of the YouTube videos. You can check us out on Facebook at PotomacBeads.com. If you need any materials, you can shop there. You can also subscribe to our channel and click to get updates. That'll update you when we get new videos. We also have some awesome designers that are helping us out and doing some videos with some of our new great products, so check out their channels as well. And if you get a chance, go to one of our Potomac Bead Company locations. We have a number of different locations, and we're here to help you pick out some great things to take classes in store, which we do have different ones, or you can also grab materials to work with some of the videos like we have here. Thanks a lot for watching. Happy peyote stitching and have fun creating, everyone.